Hello there everyone. Welcome to your weekly live Q&A. I'm Kendra Perry. If this is your first time joining me live, I am a functional nutritionist. I help women with hormone imbalance, chronic GI issues, and I help them detox so they can get their lives back, so they can get more energy, so they can lose weight, so they can eliminate brain fog, sleep better, and just create the ultimate adventurous, exciting life of their dreams, obviously. Okay, so this is your live weekly Q&A. I have been collecting questions over the past week. And if you want to submit a question for next week, you can do so by sending me a message through my page, or you can email us support@kendraperry.net. If you're on with me live today, definitely tune in, throw me a question in the comments box. I'm happy to ask your questions live on air. I really love when you guys are with me and when you're joining me. It's way more fun that way. But anyways, so let's get into it. I had some really interesting questions emailed to me this week, and so I want to make sure that I get those answered. So the first question is from Anita, and she asks, what is the best way to test for heavy metals? I'm learning that these can be an issue, but I can't figure out what test to look at. So this is actually a really, really great question. So Anita, yes, you are correct. Heavy metals are a huge issue, and they're actually an issue for all of us. And this goes beyond just heavy metals. This also includes environmental chemicals. So there are 84,000 chemicals currently in the United States alone. I don't know how many there are in Canada, but probably a similar amount. But there are chemicals all over our environment, same with metals. They come from a lot of different places like industry. They come from to us through our air, our water, pretty much everywhere. And there really is no escape. Even if you live in a pristine mountain location like I do, you can't escape from these. So I'm someone who's had a lot of metals in my body. I've had been exposed to a lot of chemicals, even though I live in this really, clean, beautiful mountain town. Unfortunately, we are all getting exposed. It doesn't matter where we live. And the current research, and there is a huge body of research that shows this, but they are getting stored in our body and the dose doesn't matter. So I think a lot of what we've been told is that, well, these things only matter in bigger amounts and we're only getting exposed to these minute amounts. And a lot of the research is actually based on these tinier amounts. But what the research has actually shown is that the dose doesn't matter, that these things are going to cause us issues even at tiny or smaller amounts, and they cause us even more issues when they're combined with other chemicals or metals. And we're never just getting exposed to just one metal or just one chemical. We're getting exposed to all kinds of things at once. But anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track here. I'm kind of sitting on my soapbox, so I'm going to regress here a little bit. And get back to your question about heavy metals testing. So I was actually having a really interesting conversation about this with a colleague. And the truth is, there's not really one test out there that's going to give you the entire body burden of metals. So metals get stored all over the body, and they get stored in certain places kind of depending on what that metal is. So for example, copper gets really heavily stored in the kidneys, whereas lead is actually really heavily stored in the bone. So the only way that we know or we see metals on any type of test, and your options are blood, urine, stool, and hair, is if we're actually actively excreting them, right? If we can't excrete them because we have poor phase 0, 1, 2, or 3 detoxification, if we're actually utilizing metals because we're deficient in minerals, which is something your body will do, then we're actually not going to see these metals come up on any test, no matter what medium you're testing. So the only way we see metals on a test is if they're being actively excreted, okay? So when I test for metals, and I always do, but I use more of my testing not as, what is the body burden of metals or what is the body actually carrying of metals, but more are you getting actively exposed to something that you can control? Because the truth is we can't control all of our exposure to metal, but some things we can. So an example, I had a client recently who was through the roof in arsenic, and what we found was that her well water had really high levels of arsenic. So the solution for her was to find a water filter that filtered arsenic, and we reduced her exposure of arsenic, which is a huge thing. Arsenic is an extremely toxic chemical. And it does inhibit enzymes in the mitochondria, so it's going to prevent you from producing energy. And of course, fatigue was one of her main complaints. So I primarily use the urine metals testing that I do with clients and hair mineral analysis to look for exposure. But what's really interesting is once we get the body into better balance, it will actually start to naturally let go of some of these metals. So I would never go in and do a heavy metals detox without addressing minerals. This is because a lot of times, I mentioned this before, a lot of times the body will actually utilize certain metals because they have similar characteristics to minerals. So for example, if the body is very deficient in calcium, magnesium, it might actually use lead to build bone. And, you know, lead makes really shitty, brittle bone, okay? No other way to say it. But it's better than nothing. So the body will utilize it, but if you rebuild the mineral system, if you replenish the body's sources of bioavailable calcium and magnesium, it actually doesn't need to hold on to this lead anymore, and it can actually let it go a lot more easily, okay? So when I address metals, I always address minerals first. I don't typically recommend chelators like DMSA as a very typical chelator that a doctor might give you, because they actually strip the body of metals extremely quickly, and they dump all those metals into the kidneys. So it's extremely dangerous and hard on the kidneys. Plus, it may strip the bottle of metals that it actually needs temporarily whilst you are mineral deficient, okay? So when it comes to testing metals, there is no perfect test. I mean, ideally, I want to look at hair, urine, and stool. I don't like to look at blood. I actually don't think that's a good medium to test metals, so I actually don't recommend blood. But urine, stool, and hair is a good way to get, you know, an overall picture of exposure, of excretion, and you can support that. But really, it can take time to actually know that you are exposed to metals. And I think a lot of cases when it comes to metals and chemicals, it almost doesn't matter about the individual metal or the individual chemical, because really what matters is that we all have them to some degree. So we need to detox. So we need to actually do the things that we know get these things out of the body so that we are no longer storing them and they are no longer inhibiting our good function. Okay. So in terms of mineral testing, I mean, you guys, I'm on my soapbox all the time about mineral testing. I think it's a really important test. I love using it with clients. It's been extremely powerful in helping my clients get quick results. It's been the most powerful thing I've ever done for my health. And when it comes to addressing metals, one of the best ways to get metals out of the body is to make sure you have all the minerals you need so that you can start letting go of metals. There's Sela. I'm on dog sitting duty right now. Okay. Okay, good question. Okay. Oh, and okay, just had a drink of water. So the next question is, how much water should I drink? I don't have much energy for exercise, so I mostly only walk. So how much should I be drinking in a day? And I've actually really recently changed my opinion on this. So I think I was actually pretty ignorant about water consumption in the past. I mostly thought that we were over consuming water and depleting our electrolytes. I thought that you could measure your hydration by the color of your urine, and it turns out I was totally wrong. Okay. So I've actually totally changed my viewpoint on this. So my new viewpoint is that most of us are completely chronically dehydrated. There's a number of reasons for that. Number one is that we are very mineral deficient, but also that we're drinking very mineral deficient or so-called dead water. Okay. So this is how much water you should drink. So take your body weight, divide it by 2. So half your body weight in ounces is typically how much water that you should be drinking in a given day. And because our water is way less mineral rich than it used to be in the past, I actually recommend adding a 1/4 teaspoon of Celtic sea salt or Himalayan sea salt to your water per every liter or 32 ounces of water. Okay. So that's how much water you want to drink when you're not doing anything. That's kind of like maybe a day where you didn't have a lot of activity. If you're just walking, that's probably going to be enough. But if you're someone who's active, or if you're using an infrared sauna or a regular sauna, if you're sweating a lot, you're going to have to greatly increase that amount. Okay. But I do want to mention when it comes to water, quality matters. And a lot of us are not drinking good water. Tap water is not an appropriate way to drink water, okay? And this is a big reason why we get so chronically dehydrated, because tap water contains a lot of chemicals in it that actually interfere with our body's ability to use minerals. So chlorine and chloramine are added to tap water. A Brita will get rid of chlorine. It will not get rid of chloramine, so it's not really adequate. Chloramine can be just as bad for you as chlorine. Depending on where you live in the world, you may be getting exposed to fluoride in your water. These are all called halides, and these actually interfere with your body's ability to use iodine. And when you don't use iodine properly, you're going to have thyroid issues. So in effect, drinking tap water can actually make you gain weight. It can ruin your energy levels. It can cause anxiety. It can make you constipated. It can make you cold. All these typical thyroid symptoms, because actually the halides, chlorine, chloramine, bromine, and fluoride, bromine's not typically added to water, but the other three I mentioned are, interfere with your body's ability to utilize iodine, and your thyroid hormone is made from iodine. So very important. You need to be filtering your water. Well water, you also need to be filtering well water as well. So well water is not going to be having like added chlorine and fluoride to it, but typically I see people who drink well water, they're getting exposed to high levels of iron and high levels of manganese. So very important in small amounts, but when you have excess amount of these, they can actually cause a lot of issues in your body. So even well water does need to be filtered. I really should do a whole live stream on water filtration systems, because most are not adequate, especially distillation and reverse osmosis. I'm also not a fan of ionizers or alkaline water systems. You can actually get a really inexpensive water system that gets rid of all the crap, herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, halides, even drug residues, which is a big issue for anyone who's drinking municipal or city water, because everyone's medicated and we're all peeing out our drugs into the water, and that will recirculate into the water system, and there's no city out there that is actually filtering for drug residues. So Purifax filters is the one I recommend. It's really inexpensive. I think it's the most inexpensive out of all the systems you can buy. So definitely take a look at that. But back to your question, half your body weight in ounces is what you want to drink in a day. And I would do about 32 ounces within an hour of waking. And for every 32 ounces or liter of water, you want that 1/4 teaspoon of Celtic sea salt. Okay. So if you're on with me live and you got a question for me, fire it away. I'm happy to answer any of your questions on air. If you have a question for next week's Q&A, I'm going to start doing these weekly on the same day. So they're going to be every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific. That is 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you have questions, you can email us, support@kendraperry.net, or you can just shoot me a Facebook message and just let me know what your question is. If you're too shy to ask it live, that's no problem. I'm happy to take your questions that way. Okay, so final question. This is a good one. What's causing my skin to be super dry, like peeling off dry? It's been getting worse. Okay, so really, really good question. And there are several things that could be causing your skin to be dry. The first thing I would think about is water. Okay, and so we just talked about water and how much you should be drinking in a day. So if you're drinking less than that, that's where I'd start. Sometimes it can be as simple as you're just chronically dehydrated. Your body doesn't have enough moisturizer to hydrate the skin. So make sure you are drinking enough water. The second thing I would wonder about is fat consumption. Are you eating enough healthy fats? So that's going to be things like ghee and coconut oil and butter and olive oil and avocados. Make sure you're eating enough healthy fats. Make sure you're liberally eating fats. We're not a fan of the low-fat diet anymore. That is not the way to go. Fats are healthy and they're going to help give your body the moisture it needs. So I would look into your fat consumption and your water consumption. The other things I would look into are thyroid. So when your thyroid is under functioning, it can actually cause really dry skin. So I would consider running a full thyroid panel with your doctor or naturopath. So you want to make sure you're getting not just TSH, but also free T3, free T4, total T3, total T4. Also look for TPO and TGB antibodies to look for autoimmunity, but I would look at thyroid issues. I would also consider, if this is a big issue, I would consider looking at your minerals, okay? So there's actually two different types of metabolic types, and I can tell the difference between the two based on your mineral presentations, but there's a fast metabolic type and there's a slow metabolic type. And the slower metabolic type tends to have a slower metabolism, and because of that, they have less oil production in the skin. So they tend to be the ones who have more dry skin, whereas the fast metabolic types, they produce a lot of oil. So they're typically the ones who have oily skin and oily hair. They tend to be a bit more way more likely to get things like acne, although slow metabolic types can have it too. But I would consider getting your minerals tested because it may just be a matter of balancing your minerals. If you have a lot of calcium in your body, and especially if it's unusable or biounavailable calcium, which is very typical if you have thyroid issues, that can actually lead to a lot of dry skin. I would also be wondering about your skincare regime. Are you using good healthy oils on your skin? Are you using any cleanser or moisturizer that has acid in it that's drying out your skin? I'm a big fan of jojoba oil. It may actually be pronounced jojoba oil, but I always feel silly when I say that. So I'm going to call it jojoba oil, but it's actually not an oil. It's a wax ester, and it most closely resembles the oil that your skin naturally produces. So it's a really nice oil. I rub it on my skin every night, and it's actually really good for people who are struggling with skin conditions, especially acne, because it's this really nice oil. It helps, your body not overproduce oil and create acne, but it's actually not super oily. It's not like coconut oil or other types of oil. It actually just is a really nice hydration for your skin. So I would definitely be looking at switching to a natural skincare regimen. I'd be considering jojoba oil or any sort of natural based oil on your skin every single night. So that would be really helpful. Okay, so that's all I got for you guys today. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions for next week's Q&A, it's going to be next Thursday, not this Thursday, but the following Thursday. I think that's it's like the middle of June already. And it's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific. That's 7 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be every Thursday moving forward. So if you have questions, send me a Facebook message or email my team, support@kendraperry.net. And we will make sure to get your question answered on air. Or you can always join me live and throw your questions at me because I am always happy to help. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. And I hope you have a good day.